Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Some years ago I did this talk, and it has proven to be a little bit too long. It's an hour and 6 minutes. Hence the title of tonight's Chalk Talk. It's revised in the sense that I would like to shorten it so it could be put on one reel. Ladies and gentlemen, some time ago I met the man from whom I learned most of what I know about alcohol and alcoholism. His name was Walter Green, a doctor, a general practitioner from the Detroit area, who was also a recovered alcoholic. When he got well, he went back to the top of his profession, but he went back with this difference. He dedicated his life to alcoholic patients only, and he treated about 6,000 of them before he died. I submit for your consideration that he knew what he was talking about. He had experiential knowledge of having been there himself. He had the loving clinical knowledge of his patients, and he had what I hope that you will be as impressed by as I was, a genius for simplicity and a marvelous grasp of the obvious. He was a genius in my book. And by way of beginning, the little doc used to present a picture of alcoholism itself. Alcoholism is one of the oldest diseases known. It's one of the most complex. We do not know what causes it. We know what causes drinking. We don't know what causes compulsive or alcoholic drinking. It's one of the most complete. It affects every single facet of the human being, body, mind, emotion, and soul. It is the most destructive. Most alcoholics die. And the disease affects seriously those who live with it. Paradoxically enough, it's the one about which we know the least. It's the one about which we know the least. Since most mistakes in judgment in this field result in tragedy, it only makes sense that what can be known should be known. And there is no field on earth in which there are more half-truths and myths and fallacies. One of the greatest myths is, let's send him to a doctor to find out why he drinks. And we believe that if a person knows why he drinks, the drinking problem will disappear. A knowledge of causes doesn't dissipate a problem, ladies and gentlemen. Proper therapy does. You may know why your tooth aches, but it'll still ache until you see a dentist. Alcoholism. There are a few things that we can know about it, what it is and what it does, based on the knowledge of alcohol, what it is and what it does. And that's where we will begin. There are reasons why people drink, and they're simple. But let's look at the reasons why people drink all of the things they drink. The first thing that touches human lips is water. Why do we drink it? We have to. It slakes thirst. The second is milk. And it is drunk for the simplest reason of all. We have to drink it to maintenance of health. These two beverages are necessary. They're natural. But the human animal drinks a whole lot of other beverages, and he drinks them for different reasons. Usually when we're very young, we're introduced to something sweet, soda, soft drink, hot chocolate. And the reason is there's a preference for sweetness in the taste buds of the young. Try it, you'll like it. It is drunk to please a desire rather than fulfill a need. All right. Now we come to coffee. This is the first beverage that contains a drug. It is different from these other three. We have to learn to drink coffee. It's a learned process. You acquire a taste for it. And you have to acquire a taste for it because it's not good, it doesn't taste good. Why do we drink it? Three reasons, each of which is very simple. Number one is curiosity. Come custom dictates its use. Well, there's a social aspect to the drinking of coffee. It's called conviviality. And this can hardly be defined, but it is there. Gosh, Mom, did you see him talking all the while he was writing that big long word? Nothing to it, folks. Conviviality. You are not thirsty. A sip of water takes care of your thirst, but it happens to be the coffee break. Everybody's had one, you have one too. There is a social aspect to the drinking of coffee. Now, please, we come to alcohol. The drinking of which is also learned. Some learn a little quicker than others. Some drink it all their lives and never learn to like it. That's neither here nor there. Alcohol has been drunk for centuries. Why? Ladies and gentlemen, the reasons are many, but they're terribly simple. Number one is curiosity. Alcohol is a big people drink. Even legally, we're forbidden to drink until we reach a certain age. And so there's a whole lot of curiosity about it. And somewhere along the line, you take a little whiskey, you cut it with water, put a little sugar in it to make it sweet, put a little garbage in it to give it a little color, take a sip, you're doing just as the big people do. It's customary to drink alcohol at births, deaths, weddings, wakes, celebrations, graduations, anniversaries, feast days, fast days, holy days, holidays, Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays. Conviviality, it produces a whole lot more conviviality than coffee. It's called the social lubricant. Some people are easy to take when you oil it. Escape. This word of professional is paranoid. He's drinking to escape. Ladies and gentlemen, to seek to escape the unpleasant by substituting the pleasant for it is the most natural thing on earth. Mankind's been doing it since the day he arrived here. When it gets cold, you put on a coat. You got a headache, you take an aspirin. It rains, you come in. Alcohol provides escape from certain other unpleasantries. Husbands, wives, kids, jobs, pain. It used to be taken to alleviate pain, but today we have a whole lot of better painkillers, so this is no longer a valid reason for drinking. I used to say if somebody shows up drunk at 8:30 in the morning, you ask him why, and he looks at you and says, receiving gums. That ain't too good a reason. Here, ladies and gentlemen, is the main reason why everybody drinks beverage alcohol. One word: euphoria. You drink alcohol because it gives you a sense of well-being. Quite bluntly, you drink booze because it makes you feel good. And Lord, we've filled libraries with a whole lot of garbage trying to explain why people drink. My friends, it explains why you pay $2.50 for 3 ounces of martini instead of buying 8 bottles of root beer for the same price. 3 ounces versus what, 48, 72, 112 ounces? Doesn't make sense. Except one little old martini does what all the root beer in the world can't do. Makes you feel good. That's why we drink it. That's why we... Now, why do you want to feel good? Now you can fill psychiatric libraries. What is this magic elixir that makes people feel good that has caused them to drink it despite the bad taste for centuries? Basically and bluntly, alcohol is a chemical composed of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, C2H5OH. That's no indication of my vast knowledge of chemistry. I know about as much as you do. H2O is water. I've come to learn that K9P emanates from the south end of a dog. And that's about all the chemistry I know. But the reason this is put up here is to show what it's made of. Alcohol is digested, oxidized, burned up by the liver. And it does so at the rate of 3/4 of an ounce an hour. And ladies and gentlemen, you can either accelerate or decelerate that process. There's no such thing as a hangover cure. The only thing you get when you give black coffee to a drunk is a wide-awake drunk. Alcohol is a solvent, an irritant. It's been called a stimulant. It's an antiseptic and an anesthetic. Now, please, it is a solvent. It's a good one. It's been known to remove lots of things. Stains from tables, stomachs, paychecks, bankrolls, careers, jobs, families, marriages, and lives. It's the best solvent on earth. It's an irritant. Cut yourself, spill a little alcohol in the cup, you will rise again. It is not a stimulant. but we believe it to be so because of the wacky things people do when they drink it. We'll see that later. It's an antiseptic. A nurse will purify your lung with a little rubbing alcohol before she gives you a needle, and for some reason, the only anesthetic that we had. Basically, in its drinkable form, alcohol is a sedative drug. Alcoholism is addiction to that drug. My friends, that's this whole talk in one sentence. Alcohol is a drug, alcoholism is addiction to it. What is addiction? It is a phenomenon characterized by two things. Number one is compulsive use. Quite bluntly, the alcoholic, along with all other addicts, uses the way he uses because he can't not use that way. Alcoholism has nothing to do with willpower. If alcoholism were a question of willpower, there wouldn't be any alcoholics. Number two, progression. And this is a weird phenomenon that I will simply state, and then we will comment about it later, because there's no such thing as proof or explanation or anything else. We'll simply comment on it. What does progression mean? It means, again, in spite of so-called scientific research and experimentation, once contracted, it lasts until death. And it gets worse until death. As I said, we'll just comment on that later. Right now, let's go back to sedative. That is a statement. How do we prove it? Dr. Green shows the sedative properties of alcohol by comparing its action with that of another accepted anesthetic drug, ether. Now, I don't know what we all know about ether, but I think we would all accept the fact that an anesthetized rabbit could be referred to as the ether bunny. I apologize for that. We'll not do it again. Ether is an anesthetic that acts on the brain and puts it to sleep by interfering with its oxygen supply. The brain is an organ composed of parts that control functions. The outermost part of the brain is the seat of reason, judgment, intellect. Beneath that is your emotions, your imagination, your memory. Deeper still, the motor activity, the movement of arms and legs, your sense coordination. And then some refinements of that, the semi-voluntary and involuntary actions. Semi-voluntary, the blinking of your eyes. At times you can control it, at times you don't. The gust of wind, you blink. The purely involuntary functions would be the action of your stomach and your intestines in their work of digestion, the digestion of food. The innermost, smallest, most protected part of the brain houses those functions that are absolutely essential to life. The right word for life is vita. What is essential to life is therefore vital. Your vital functions are your heartbeat and your breathing. Doc Green says, let's take a normal adult and drug him with ether, then we'll do the same thing with alcohol. What's a normal adult? According to Doc Green, an adult is someone who functions according to the formula I over E. Intellect controls emotions. Aquinas calls us rational animals. I over E, intellect over emotions. Now please, let's see what happens to that formula when the brain that controls it gets drugged. First of all, there is a physical reaction of dryness in the throat. Ether is highly absorbent of moisture, and it dries out the mucous membranes of the throat. If you've ever undergone surgery by ether, you've noticed after one or two inhalations, you get a very vague sensation of suffocating. You want to rip the mask off and gulp fresh air. But before you can, you feel good. You know why you feel good? It's, ladies and gentlemen, almost mathematical. Watch what happens when ether gets to the brain and hits the first part that is vulnerable. Intellect. Reason goes out the window. Watch the formula. It's I over E except after D. Add the drug. Knock out reason. Liberate the emotions. You have a reversal of the formula and enter an excitement stage. Quite bluntly, you feel good because ether just put to sleep what would make you feel bad. Reason. You see, the problem is still there. He's going to be operated on, but it doesn't bother you. The excitement stage. When the emotions come out, this is important. When the emotions come out, they come out drug affected. You see, that's the next part of the brain that gets hit. You are not not watching emotional behavior. Here you are watching drugged emotional behavior. Supposing, for example, you walk into an operating room and there's your mother and she's babbling. Let's stop the anesthetic here. Here's your mother babbling. How many of you would say, good heavens, she needs a psychiatrist? Does that make sense? Just bear that in mind for 1 minute. You may or may not feel sick. The next part of the brain that gets hit is what controls your motor activity. Watch, please. You're not in your right mind. You're not in your right emotions. You're not in your right body. You're in an excitement stage with the danger of sickness. These are dangers. They shoot you right through them. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why that sheet is wrapped rather tightly around you. That's why they're standing there, and that's why they zoom you right through this. When the semi-voluntary functions go, you're unconscious. They don't call it simple unconsciousness. They call it pre-anesthesia. It means you're out, but you can't yet be operated on. You were hurt. When the involuntary functions go, you're anesthetized. Anesthesia is a comatose state, leaving you with your vital functions, and that's it. And ladies and gentlemen, when they go, you do. Death is the next step. That's why it's a very dangerous thing. That's why anesthesiologists are specialists who do nothing but that. Coming out of it, you just do the same process in reverse. You go from anesthesia to pre-anesthesia, you'd be sick. Hopefully you'd be sick, and you undergo an excitement stage. Now, obviously, there's not going to be any euphoria. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the comparison. All you have to do is cross out ether and write down alcohol. It does exactly the same thing. They don't act alike. They do exactly the same thing, and this is the chemical reason why. Now let's go back to that formula. C2H5OH. That's alcohol. Ether is two of them. HOC2H5. They have two molecules of alcohol without, however, the water. They take the H2O out. As I've said a couple of thousand times, ether is a double shot without a chaser. Of course they do the same thing. Ladies and gentlemen, they can't not do the same thing. They're composed of carbon, oxygen, hydrogen. The only thing different is the molecular structure. Now, please, let's watch the action of alcohol on the brain. After your first shot, there was a burning sensation. I'm talking about straight whiskey, not the beer and wine. You're holding one, you've heard about it, now you got one. Oh, that was good. The tears are coming. What happens? The first paradox about alcohol, it's a liquid that dries out your throat. See, it's two things. Number one, it's highly absorbent of moisture, and it dries out, the mucous membrane of the throat. It's also an irritant. It burns on the way down. Feels like you're swallowing ground glass. Your first drink was not a taste, it was a sensation. Now, please, that's why we take the chaser, to alleviate that burning. Now you begin to feel euphoria because this is what happens. Alcohol is handled at the rate of 3/4 of an ounce an hour. It's handled by the liver. Now you're going to find 3/4 of an ounce of alcohol in about a shot and a half of 100 proof whiskey. Suppose you drink 6 of them in an hour. The liver handles 1. The rest get in the bloodstream for subsequent trips. The blood, in its coursing, brings the alcohol to the brain. And when the alcohol gets to the brain, it begins to sedate it. The brilliance of Dr. Greene. He says, how do we know? Simple observation. Don't you know when you're in the presence of somebody drinking? You notice in the motor activity, you notice in the emotional behavior. If somebody's very drunk, he staggers. But in the beginning, you see the faint slowness of the blinking of the eyelids. And after a while, the tongue begins to get a little bit thick. Notice somebody stand in front of his wife. He says, you've been drinking. He says, You've been drinking. He says, how can you stand there, your face hanging out? That's the way it accusing you of drinking. He thinks you're functioning normally. And you think you function normally, still can you drink? You feel good because alcohol puts to sleep what would make you feel bad. You feel good because after a drink or two, the worrywart begins to go to sleep. And so, my friends, it's high over E except after drug alcohol. And alcohol for the formula, knock out the worrywart and liberate the emotions. Now you know why the guy smiled when he said the rest do? The problem was there, but it doesn't bother him. The worrywart's out of the picture. And this is why we do wacky things when we drink. Reason is gone. Now, please, this is important. When the emotions come out, they come out drug affective. You are not watching emotional behavior in a drinker. You are watching drugged emotional behavior. Now, why is this important for the alcoholic? Now let's look at the alcoholic. All of this stuff, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't have to do with alcoholism. It has to do with anybody who drinks alcohol. But for the moment, now let's go to the alcoholic. He lives that way. He lives that way. Because he's been drugging his brain with too much too often for 18 years. And we look at him and we see the wacky behavior. Good heavens, he was told if he came in drinking, he'd be fine, and he came in drunk. So we sent him to a psychiatrist because he's acting crazy. Ladies and gentlemen, these are Dr. Green's findings about alcoholics. In the initial stages of recovery, psychiatric treatment is contraindicated. He needs to be gotten sober first. Now let's go back to your mother on the operating table. I'm just going to ask you one simple question. How would you know if your mother needed psychiatric or professional care for her emotional problems? Wouldn't you say, get the ether out of her first so you can evaluate her? That's all we do with alcoholics. Get them sober first. Do some alcoholics need professional help after they get sober? Yes. Doc Green, you said if you were nuts before you started to drink, you'll be wackier after you quit. Certainly you'll need help. But guess what he found out? The percentage of alcoholics who needs help is exactly the same as the percentage of the non-alcoholic population. Which proves that even though there are psychological beginnings to drinking, those causes have nothing to do with the alcoholism. Alcoholism is biochemical. These things are way in the background. Quite bluntly, ladies and gentlemen, most professionals put the cart before the horse. All these so-called causes are nothing but the results. The guy's acting like a fruitcake because he's been drugged for 18 years. All I'm saying is this. In the initial stages, you don't use that sort of therapy. You get the alcoholic sober first. Then you give him what he needs. The excitement stage manifests itself in many, many different ways. Whatever you are in your emotional makeup will come out drugged, exaggerated. Now, what kind of a drinker or drunk are you? There are 4 basic types and hundreds of variations on the theme. There's the jocose type, the bellicose type, the lachrymose type. They're big old Latin and Greek words, but yeah, I'm sure you all figure this one out, the amorose type. The good-natured slob, he's very shy, but after 6 drinks he's standing on a piano telling jokes. The bellicose type is usually a little guy, about 4'2", he weighs 98 pounds, and he's afraid of the dark, but get him drunk, he'll take on the whole world. He'll enjoy you act. In treatment, you can spot these guys right off the bat, the new men with the new teeth. Then there's the lachrymose or crying drunk. We won't even go into him. I used to spend 20 minutes on that, but you've all met a crying drunk. And then there's the lover. Ladies and gentlemen, even Shakespeare has in one of his plays the fact of alcohol being a sexual suppressant. Alcohol is a drug. It reduces sexual potency. It doesn't stimulate. What it actually does is paradoxical. It knocks out control over what's already there. But in the alcoholic family, the sexual problems are unbelievable. The promise and the performance are usually 2 different things, as Shakespeare said that. Comes home with blood in his eye and passes out at the head of the stairs. Or if he stays awake long enough to get into bed, she usually has to go to bed with a drunken pig. And the problems over the years are unbelievable. You may or may not get sick, and if you drink enough, you will pass out. This is not blackout, it's passing out, unconsciousness. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the paradoxes of alcohol. It's a liquid that dries out your throat. It's a sedative that seems to stimulate because you enter an excitement stage. And it's an anesthetic that even though it can, it does not anesthetize. It's a liquid. And once you drink enough to pass out, you can't pick up the glass to swallow anymore. Theoretically, you can drink enough in the beginning to slam you down there, but it's also allowed to slam you down here. And if, of course, you sedate the vital functions, the result is obvious, death. Alcohol does and can kill. However, coming out from under the influence of alcohol, you go through the same process in reverse as you did going in. You go from anesthesia to pre-anesthesia, you'll be sick, and you undergo an excitement stage. There will be no euphoria because of a so-called hangover symptom. All right. Now let's look at two people who go through this process. One's an alcoholic and one is not. Charlie and his Aunt Mabel go to a New Year's Eve party. Charlie's the alcoholic. He shows up, he burns his throat, he feels good for a while, he's the loving life of the party, changes into filthy McNasty, somebody hits him in the mouth, he cries in his beer, and passes out at 20 minutes of 12. He came to see the New Year in, but he hadn't seen the New Year in 4 years. He's unconscious at midnight. That's not by choice. He's determined to see the New Year in, but he suffers compulsion. He drinks more than he intended to. He shoots through euphoria and winds up unconscious. Now, please, let's look at Aunt Mabel. Aunt Mabel doesn't drink at all because he does. Aunt Mabel's the old moralistic shrew in the family. There's one somewhere, everywhere. Maybe you know one. She gives you the impression God went on vacation and appointed her to fill in. Mabel is strong-willed. Mabel wakes up in the morning, looks at her hair in the mirror, and says, "Fart." And it does. Now, Mabel doesn't drink, but they offer her a glass of orange juice. She says, okay. So they give her a little orange juice, one ice cube, and they fill the glass with vodka. At 3/4 of the way through the glass, old Mabel's head is down on the table. What's the difference between Mabel and Charlie? The next morning, Charlie's going to wake up and reach for a bottle. He'll bite off about 4 ounces before he leaves bed to go to the bathroom so he won't commit suicide when he shaves. And poor old Mabel doesn't know she's had a drink to start with. What's the difference between Charlie and Charlie's aunt? What is an alcoholic? Ladies and gentlemen, there are as many definitions of alcoholics as there are people. And everyone can define an alcoholic. Well, an alcoholic is a former corporation lawyer who's down on Skid Row bumming nickels. Congratulations. I wonder if you could have spotted him 18 years ago when he was wearing $500 silk suits. But the symptoms were still there. What is the alcoholic? My definition of alcoholic is one whose drinking is causing problems. All alcoholics, as a base for their disease, drink too much. Wasn't that brilliant? Excessive drinking. But ladies and gentlemen, there are a lot of non-alcoholics who abuse alcohol and drink excessively. The difference is that the alcoholic usually does. He has an excessive drinking habit. Now, please, what is excessive? How much is too much? That amount is excessive, which causes trouble. That's too much. Now, like what trouble? The following list of things are the results of excessive drinking and are therefore the symptoms of alcoholism. Number 1, the blackout. By definition, a blackout is present inability to recall something done recently under the influence. You remember graduating from grammar school and can't remember driving the car home last night. That's a blackout. A normal drinker would be frightened to death of such a thing. Alcoholics do this all the time. Number 2, gulping and sneaking drinks. Hey, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you want a thumbnail little question to diagnose alcoholism, one question. Do normal drinkers do this? If your answer is no, you talk about abnormalcy. If any of you men were to go home tonight and see your wife sneak out of the dining room, go into the bathroom, open the toilet tank, pull out a bottle of milk and drink 3 shots, you'd have her committed in 2 minutes. Normal people don't do that. And yet we watch alcoholics drink that way and think it's kind of ordinary. Have you ever embarrassed someone sneaking a drink? You walk in the kitchen, he's got a great big hooker, it's going, "Hi, Henry." "Hi, how are you?" You don't know what to do with it, it weighs a ton. Ladies and gentlemen, normal people don't get embarrassed taking a drink. Loss of control. This is the biggie. It indicates compulsion. It indicates compulsion. Have you ever drunk more than you determined you were going to drink? That's loss of control. And if your answer is yes, more than once, you better look at your drinking. Now, however, when somebody asks us about that, the old alcoholic has an alibi system to choke a horse. You know what an alibi is? It's an unreasonable reason for doing something. What did you get drunk last Thursday for? It rained. How about Saturday? It didn't. How about last Sunday? The Colts won. How about the week before? They lost. It's the Every alcoholic has a 900-year-old dog. He has a birthday every 3 weeks. The eye opener. The eye opener is the need of a drink after a period of deprivation, which is usually after sleep, so the eye opener usually occurs in the morning. But did you notice I didn't call it the morning drink? The alcoholic, in order to alibi his way out of things, will stay away from a drink until noon. He'll shake to pieces. So he can say, well, I didn't drink till noon. He also didn't get up till noon, but he doesn't look at that. Drinking alone. The alcoholic drinks alone to hide the frequency and the amount. I don't want you to know I drink as much as I do, as often as I do, so I drink where you can't see me. The office drinker who goes into the laboratory to drink. All you have to do is answer your question. Do normal drinkers drink in the toilet? Usually not. Change the pattern. I've got to do something about my drinking, so he switches. He changes the pattern. He switches from bourbon to rye. From rye to vodka. From vodka to beer. It is always from one alcoholic beverage to another. And then this one that has killed people. Why don't you just drink beer? Beer never hurt anybody. Ladies and gentlemen, the addiction is to alcohol, not the clothing it wears. You know the difference between a beer alcoholic and a whiskey alcoholic? The amount of alcohol you find in a 12-ounce bottle of beer is exactly what you find in a 1-ounce shot of whiskey. The difference is obvious. You got to drink more beer to get it. You got to go to the bathroom more often, it ain't worth it. Then so about a fellow ordered a bottle of beer in the bar, he went to the bathroom, dumped it down, and John, somebody asked him what was wrong with him. He lost his mind. He says, no, he's just tired of being the middleman. Antisocial behavior. Just listen to this line, see if you've ever heard it, see if you've ever used it. He's a wonderful fellow. When he's sober. Antisocial behavior is characteristic of the alcoholic. Okay? The antisocial behavior has results. Loss of friends, jobs, and families. An alcoholic is one whose drinking causes problems. And the family usually suffers. The friends disappear from the whole family. Because to take the family, you got to take him. And when he comes, there's always a fight, so don't invite them. Jobs. I do my job better drinking than any 5 men sober. And the only thing you can say to a man like that is keep drinking. And families. Ladies and gentlemen, I've said this 1,000 times too. The effect on families is unbelievable. School begins very shortly. And every noon, bells will ring in schools just like this one, and the kids will go down to the cafeteria to eat lunch. And at any given table, there's one kid with his face down in the soup saying nothing while they're all talking about what happened last night. Some game, some show, whatever. He's saying nothing. Guess what happened in his home last night? He lay in bed shaking, listening to his father calling his mother a goddamn whore in the middle of a drunken rage, and he's been raised on this. And who's he share this with? Not a soul. He just keeps it in and gets sicker. And that kid, if he ever touches alcohol, is practically a sitting duck for alcoholism himself. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll just mention that because it demands hours of talking for itself. Now, please, doctors and hospitals. The alcohol is beginning to butcher the body now. And so it's in and out of hospitals. And he still is blind. He can't see what his 3-year-old can see. It's nerves. It's the stomach. It's anything but the drinking. You know how we treated alcoholics? The professional goes after what he thinks are the causes of alcoholism, and they're not. They're the cause of the drinking. Inferiority complex, fear of authority, death in the family, shyness, whatever. The social worker goes after the effects. You know, feed the family, clothe the family, get him another job. Meanwhile, he's drinking himself to death. 2 men 40 years ago finally came along and said, let's stop the drinking. Now he's scared. The doctor says, you have cirrhosis, drink again and you'll die. So he stays sober for 14 years. And then he drinks again. Now, friends, we're going to discuss this little old thing right here, progression. Alcoholism progresses whether you drink or not. And after 14 years of sobriety, the alcoholic picks up a drink, and a week later he finds himself on a binge and a bender, and he wonders what hit him. No one can explain that. It is a simple truth. The only answer to alcoholism is total, complete abstinence. And that's why all these programs of research trying to make alcoholics drink again is going to kill them. I'm a man, I can handle a beer. I have 14 years of sobriety, so he does. He handles a beer. And the next day he handles a beer. And the next day he handles a beer. But 3 days later he handles 4 beers. And 2 days later he's handling 6 shots. And a week later, 4 quarts handles him. At the punch bowl's brink, let the thirsty think what they say in Japan. First the man takes a drink, then the drink takes a drink, then the drink takes the man. When an alcoholic drinks again after a prolonged stretch of sobriety, he does not pick up where he left off. In a relatively short time, he picks up where he would have been if he had been drinking all that time. Why? God knows, and he won't tell. Tremors is an infallible sign of physical addiction. This is the inner tremors, where every fiber of your being screams for a drink. Ladies and gentlemen, the alcoholic doesn't get euphoria. He gets 10 seconds of euphoria and then 3 weeks of trying to stay alive. He works to drink, and drinking is work. That's why alcoholics lied to you. Alcohol is more important than breath. If they were to tell the truth, you'd tell them to quit. They know they can't quit. They need alcohol to live. And so, Dr. Green used to say, this indicates a positive cellular craving for the drug without which he cannot now operate normally. So it protects the supply. Keep the bartender paid. Hide the bottle. If you know somebody hides bottles, you know an alcoholic. And you see how far down the line it is, don't you? 14, unreasonable resentment. Unreasonable resentment. Ladies and gentlemen, if you were to walk down the street and somebody punched you in the nose and you didn't resent it, you'd be numb between the ears. But an alcoholic will walk downstairs, mumble good morning, his wife doesn't hear him, so she doesn't respond. 3 weeks later, he hits her in the head with a shotgun handle. That's unreasonable. Alcoholics live that way. And when you live with them, you can't cope with this. Unreasonable resentment. The wife says, if I say yes, I'm wrong. If I say no, I'm wrong. I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. Nameless fears and anxieties. This disease teaches its victims one single thing. It's the only thing alcoholics learn from their illness. That's how to be scared to death. Ladies and gentlemen, they're afraid to live and they're afraid to die. They're just afraid. Till you come to the end of the line, the collapse of the alibi system. You know what that means? It means that if he's lucky, the alcoholic reaches his moment of truth. He looks into the mirror of himself and sees what is there instead of what he wants to be there. He sees what everybody else has been looking at. He says, I did not get drunk last night because it rained or because it didn't rain. I don't know what the weather was. It's not her big mouth. She's gone. The Colts neither won nor lost. They didn't play. The dog is dead. I did not intend to drink, and I got drunk. I have a drinking problem. Now he can respond to help. You see, if the poor alcoholic surrenders to his addiction, he winds up incarcerated, insane, or dead, where he can surrender to help. The only help that I know of that really works, and it works best for most, is a phenomenon called AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. It contains 12 steps of therapy out of the pit. But ladies and gentlemen, I believe God gave us the science of medicine for sick bodies, psychiatry for sick minds, psychology for jumbled emotions. I believe we have dentists for bad teeth. I believe he gave us AA for alcoholism. It's what works best for most. Now, please, I have said most of what I intend to say tonight. But it would be grossly incomplete and unjust of me to leave without asking one single question to dispel forevermore a crazy myth that we have labored under and that has resulted in hundreds of thousands of alcoholic deaths. Is it true that you cannot help an alcoholic unless he wants help? That's a lie. It's a myth. It's completely unjust. Don't hand me this, you can lead horses to water and not make them drink. I know that. But you can lead them to a well and make them thirsty. And that's what we do when we coerce an alcoholic into treatment. We offer him something to respond to. And if the treatment is good, he will probably respond. Ladies and gentlemen, I I overeat plus alcohol equals the insanity of the alcoholic. Do you know what the insanity of the alcoholic is? He consumes a chemical that is killing him. Now watch this real simple formula. E over I, the insanity of alcoholism, plus AA is a restoration to sanity. He now functions normally again. He doesn't drink. My friends, I thank you for being here. I thank you for listening to me. And the prayer that I leave on is this. If any of you has a drinking problem, I hope to God I just spoiled your drinking for you. Good night. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a simple fact that alcoholics can get well. It's also a simple fact, but not known by many people, that we can do a few things to help them get well. And this evening, I would like to share with you a few magnificent things that I was privileged to pick up some years ago from a beautiful lady that I was privileged to work with for 3 years, Mrs. Gertrude Nielsen. She worked under Dr. Isidore Turk in the Division of Alcoholism Control for the state of Maryland. And after some years under him, she was asked by him to write out what she had learned. Gertrude was a truly humble woman. She was not out to impress anyone, so she didn't write a book. Did you ever notice when somebody has a marvelous idea, it takes them 412 pages to say it? But anybody writes books. Gertrude, being a woman of eminent practicality, wrote it all on one side of one sheet of paper. 10 declarative sentences. They were nothing but a list of do's and don'ts. And the only thing I have done is use all of that material, but I have slightly rearranged it into 8 guidelines, as I call them, and I'd like to share them with you this evening. I would like to preface my remarks with this one. They are not guaranteed to do anything. They are not a magic wand that if you use them, they'll work. I have experienced a lot of discouragement after talks like this, to be walking out and somebody would stop me almost in anger and say, I've tried them all, he's still drinking. And the only thing you can say is, at least you tried. At least you tried. Now please, again by way of preface, I think that we all should understand that when we listen to anyone say anything, we listen to our own ears. And when we look, we see through our own eyes. I know exactly what I'm going to say this evening, and I know exactly what the words and the concepts mean to me. But I don't know how you're going to hear it. One night I was in a home with a friend of mine out in Seattle. We were talking about this very thing of point of view. It is a simple truism that two people can look at exactly the same thing and see opposites. The classic story they tell in the world of alcohol is about the orchestra leader at a society wedding. He was playing at the reception, and right in the middle of a waltz, he stopped the music. He whirled around, he was beat red, he was mad as he could be. He said, who called my piccolo player an SOB? Someone would jump to the middle and say, who called that SOB a piccolo player? Now that's about 900 years old, but it just illustrates the point. So, I was talking with Bill, and I picked a magazine up from the coffee table between us. I just held it up and asked him to tell me what he was looking at. He said, a red bordered magazine, about 8 by 10. I'm looking at a picture of the President of the United States. Over his head is the word time and a date. I said, now I'll tell you what I'm looking at. A white bordered magazine, about 8 by 10. I'm looking at a picture of Napoleon mounted on a horse. And under it is an ad for Courvoisier cognac. Ladies and gentlemen, we were both looking at the same magazine. But you see, he was looking at it from his point of view, and I was looking at it from mine. They tell another story about that bishop's older brother. He was a multi-millionaire, and at the age of 98, he announced that he was going to marry a 19-year-old child. Well, of course, they got to arguing with him about it and trying to talk him out of it, and he wouldn't be talked out of it. And after about an hour, his lawyer, in complete disgust, he just got up and he said, look, old buddy, you do exactly as you want to do. But he said, just remember this, some of these May December weddings have proven to be fatal. And that stopped the old man for a minute. He thought about it for a long while, then he made up his own mind. He simply said, well, Did she die? She died. You look at it your way, he look at it his way. All right. So you're going to hear me with your ears, and I'm going to hear me with my ears. And with that as a preface, we may as well begin. Guideline number 1. Acquire proper attitudes toward the alcoholic. Now there's a principle that underlies this guideline. So some would say on the face of the earth, you are not about to help somebody who knows that you despise them. Don't you know when somebody hates you? You can believe this or not, but an alcoholic can smell your attitude. He can be 3/4 unconscious, and he knows whether you care or whether you condemn. Now, please, what I'd like to do this evening is spend most of the time on this first guideline, because without it, the other 7 don't mean anything. I'd like to discuss with you attitudes in general, and then ask you, if you'd be so kind, as to look at your attitudes. Now, I mean, that includes recovered alcoholics as well as non-alcoholics. Look at your attitudes toward every single aspect of alcohol. Drinking, drunkenness, alcoholics, even toward alcohol itself. And then we'll examine a few of the sources of our attitudes to show you why they are just as strong and emotional as they are. First of all, attitudes in general. Ladies and gentlemen, there are 2 things that I'd like to share with you. Now, I'm not a psychologist. I only know what I've learned. Number 1, the attitude is the father of the action. The attitude is the father of the action. What I mean by that is this. Most of us in this room are intelligent men and women. I'm sure you do your jobs intelligently. I'm equally sure that you shop, save, budget, and provide for your kids' futures intelligently. But ladies and gentlemen, in every other aspect of your lives, you're almost governed by your likes, your dislikes, your opinions, and your attitudes. Face it, what you like, what you dislike, determines what you choose from a menu. The kind of clothes you buy. What you do with your vacations. And when it comes to people, oh brother, if I like you, I will bend over backwards to rationalize your shortcomings. Love is blind. Somebody once said marriage is an institution for the blind. If I do not like you, I'm almost eager to believe the worst. Now, I don't want to be that way, but I am, and so are you. That's something we have to fight till we die. Second thing about attitudes in general, we don't have them, they have us. If you want to prove it, try to get rid of one. You know what a physical habit is? It's something that has become a part of you through repetition. For example, when you put a coat on, I always get into a coat right arm first. Now, I can get into one left arm first, give me about 5 to 10 minutes for a little help. Take one of your physical habits, and for the next 3 days, do it the opposite way. It'll drive you crazy. Now, you know what an attitude is? That's a habit also. It's a habit of thinking, it's a habit of feeling, it's a habit of judging. And ladies and gentlemen, they're going to die about an hour after we do. We don't have them, they have us. He who is convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. I'm not a fool, don't take me for one. I do not delude myself into believing that within the space of an hour or so, I'm going to change attitudes you've had all your life. If I've held on to something for 32 years and you've disproven it's going to die a slow death, if it dies at all. Case in point. Man went to see a psychiatrist one time who asked him what the trouble was. The fellow said, "Doc, I think I'm dead." Now, the doctor never had one of them before. He spent about an hour with him and he got nowhere. He was intrigued with this patient. He said, "Look, I've got to see you again." The fellow said, "No problem, Doc, when do you want to see me?" He said, "In 30 days. Every day, if you will, 3 times a day, look into a mirror and say out loud to yourself, 'Dead men do not bleed.'" He did. He came back in 30 days. He said, "Doc, I've done exactly as you told me to. 90 times, dead men do not bleed. Didn't miss a one." Doctor said, "Fine, come here." He took the man's left hand, he isolated his index finger, took a pin, jabbed it, and drew a drop of blood. The man stared at it and said, "Good heavens, doctor, dead men do bleed." Now, that's what we deal with when we deal with attitudes, and I know that. Now, please, let's get down to it. Let's examine our attitudes toward every aspect of alcohol. Let's take the highly emotional phenomenon of drunkenness. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think or feel, or what is your reaction to a drunk? My initial reaction, and if I live to be 1,000, will be true, is very brief. It's almost non-existent, but it's there. Fear. From the time I was a kid, I was afraid of my father when he drank. When you see a drunk, what do you feel? What do you think? Does it ever dawn on you to question what kind of drunkenness it is? You know there are two kinds. One results from alcohol abuse, the other results from alcoholism. Those of you, for example, in the room who are social controlled drinkers, you can choose to do one of three things. You can choose not to drink, no thank you. You can choose to drink a certain amount and quit, or you can choose to get drunk. The alcoholic drinks the way he drinks because he can't not drink that way. When you see a drunk, does it ever dawn on you to question what kind of drunkenness it is? But apart from that, let's look at the attitude. What do you think of drunkenness? Is it funny? I think you've gathered by now I'm not a prude. I like a good story. And some of the most hilarious stories I've ever heard are about drunks. They are funny. Drunk going all the way on a one-way street, the cop stopped. He said, "Didn't you see those Arabs?" Drunk says, "Arabs?" He said, "Good heavens, officer, I didn't even see the Indians." He got out of his car, he put a nickel in the meter, turned it, went up to 60. He said, "Gracious, in a day and a half, I lost 182 pounds." My own all-time favorite is about the dear little old lady who walked into a bar with her pet goose under her arm. Somebody said, "What are you doing in here, that pig?" She said, "That's a goose, young man." He said, "I was talking to the goose." All right, you can keep these up forever. Now, last point. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you laugh at when you laugh at a story, whether the subject matter is alcohol, sex, race, or religion? What is funny? Isn't it the twist at the end? Jokes usually are neither moral nor immoral. The only thing that should prevent you from telling a story is if it's offensive to someone. Now please, do you see the difference between laughing at a drunk story and laughing at a man or a woman because he or she is drunk? There's a gigantic difference. My point is this. Where you laugh at drunkenness, you approve it and you condone it. Now, where you condone the abuse of alcohol, you have a very high rate of alcoholism. Face it, if I get drunk and you laugh, I'll get drunk again. If I get drunk and you say nothing, I'll get drunk again. Do you believe drunkenness is evil? I can see where an alcohol abuser should be judged morally, but guess who gets judged? The alcoholic who beats up his kids. We judge people through their behavior, but the most difficult thing on earth is to see that the obnoxious behavior of the alcoholic is dictated by his disease. He's the one we judge, and the one who should be judged gets off. Do you believe drunkenness is evil? You know you can destroy another human being with your tongue. You can tell lies, that's called slander, or worse, you can tell the truth, that's called detraction. Did you ever begin a conversation this way? "Hey, did you hear about so-and-so?" And then we dump the garbage. Somebody says, "What are you bringing that out for?" And then we justify it. Well, it is true. We can do that without batting an eye, and we condemn some poor alcoholic to the pit of hell. And yet we give real care to someone dying of cancer. We condemn someone dying of alcoholism. What do you think about drinking? Is it evil? Let me tell you something about morality, ladies and gentlemen, and the human being. If I believe something is immoral and you're doing it and I'm not doing it, I'm better than you. Now, I don't want to be that way either, but I am. So are you. If you're doing something beneath me, you are beneath me. And the alcoholic does things that are beneath us. So he is. How about drinking? Just the ingestion of alcoholic beverages. Do you believe it's evil? A lot of people do. For those who believe that drinking is evil, they have just passed judgment on about 50% of all humanity for whom bread and wine or bread and beer are staples of life. And about 3 or 4 major religions who use wine in the very worship of God. My friends, you don't know whether I'm a good guy or a bad guy, but am I evil because I use wine and fast? Now let's get down to it. What are your attitudes toward alcohol? Some people pass moral judgments on an inanimate object. Can alcohol be any more evil or good than that carpet? The attitude is the father of the action. Where I believe that alcohol is evil, I call it such things as demon rum, devil's brew. And somebody wrote that gigantically huge hit, "The lips that touch liquor will never touch mine." Now what do you think of alcoholics? Are they really sick? Really? The American Medical Association defined alcoholism as a disease in 1955. We still judge it on moral grounds. There's that attitude. Let's look at some of the sources of our attitudes. Where do they come from? How do we think and feel the way we do? What's behind it? The primary sources of all of our attitudes: parental and religious in nature. I learn from my parents who teach me what they believe. What I'd like to do now is just examine a few religions, their beliefs, and the results of those beliefs. Please understand me. I'm not here to criticize anybody's religious beliefs. I have a couple. What I'm asking you to do is take your emotions, put them in your pocket, and just coldly look at the religious belief and the result. Let's take God's chosen people, the Jews. They drink wine from birth till death. At table and in their religious ceremonial, they have practically no alcoholism. Why in the name of heaven we don't learn from them, I don't know. The reasons, I think, are fundamental, basic, almost simplistic. Number one is their attitude toward alcohol itself. They believe wine to be the gift of God that gladdens the hearts of men. They therefore use it accordingly. They do not abuse it. It just isn't done. You don't do it. A Jew would no more dream of abusing alcohol by getting drunk than he would dream of abusing an automobile by driving 120 miles an hour through a schoolyard. You just don't do it. Let's take some Christian religions that condemn, well, first of all, that condone the use of alcohol, and then a few that condemn the use of alcohol, and we'll look at the results. Let's take Roman Catholics and our Lutheran and Episcopalian cousins. We condone the use of alcohol almost to a point of abuse. Until later years now where we're learning something about it. We have a very high rate of alcoholism. Admittedly so. Some clown once said, where there are 4 Catholics, you usually find a 5th. Now hold on to your dentures. Some religions, Baptists, Mormons, at least until recently Methodists, and let's take some non-Christian people, the Muslims. They condemn the use of alcohol. They have a sky-high rate of alcoholism. Our race, our cultural, our social background plays a prominent part in our attitudes toward alcohol and its use. Most of us, ladies and gentlemen, I presume, are from a European background of one kind or another. When our forefathers came over here, they brought all of their traditions with them, including their drinking traditions. Now, for people who have to work hard, and most of our forebears had to work hard in order to eat. Those who work hard also play hard, sin hard, and drink hard. And their traditions have been passed down. Case in point. My best friend is married to a little Polish girl from South Baltimore, whose daddy worked in the steel mills. And Nancy knew that when she grew up, she'd marry a man like her father. He would work hard all week, turn the paycheck over on Friday, get drunk over the weekend, go to work on Monday. Over. She simply took it for granted. It's what happened in her house, it's what happened in her neighborhood, and it's what happened in her life. You know where your strongest source of attitudes is? Personal experience. Everybody in this room knows an alcoholic. And everybody in this room has been deeply affected by an alcoholic. My friends, do you know that over 50% of recovered alcoholics come from an alcoholic parent or two? And almost all of them swore, I'll never drink like my father. It'll never happen to me. I won't even touch the stuff. Sitting ducks. Sitting ducks. Case in point, and then we'll go on. There's a nurse back in Baltimore who has done 21 years of work in emergency rooms. This is her background. As an orphan, she was raised by her aunt and her wife-beating, child-beating alcoholic uncle. The result was predictable. She sees her uncle and every sick alcoholic. They wheel him to that hospital and she treats him accordingly with utter contempt. Is our attitude wrong? Yes. Is it understandable? You bet your life it is. Are our attitudes wrong? Yes. The only difference is degree. Ladies and gentlemen, alcoholism is a mystery. Nobody knows everything there is to know about it. And the mistakes we make are made on what we don't know rather than what we know. We all make mistakes. What are we going to do about this attitude thing? What attitude should we have? Well, let's begin negatively, what they shouldn't be. Number one, God Almighty has not yet gone on vacation and appointed either you or me to fill in. We are not put on this earth to judge people. Now, I'm pretty good at it, but that ain't why I'm here. Number two, all you have to do is answer this question. What can I do to help? What can I do to help? My answer is very clear. I've been given permission and an assignment to function full-time in alcoholism. I don't know what your answer is. Find your own. Now, please, before we leave attitudes, if the primary source of all attitudes is parental, where do you think your kids are going to get theirs? I mean about everything. Who of you in this room would want a son or a daughter to grow up to be exactly like you? Good Lord, that's terrifying. I wouldn't want anybody to grow up to be exactly like me. But so much for attitudes. Number two, learn to recognize the disease through a knowledge of its symptoms. Now, the principle behind this guideline is the simplest thing on the face of the earth. I can't help you for your alcoholism unless I see you've got it. What sense would it make for me to say to one of you, I think you better see a doctor about that boil on your neck, unless there's a boil on your neck? How can I help you for your drinking problem unless I see you have one? Now, how are we going to learn alcoholism? Ladies and gentlemen, please believe this is the easiest thing on the face of the earth. You can learn most of a working knowledge of alcoholism in about a day and a half. There are books, pamphlets, films, lectures, workshops, seminars, institutes of alcohol study. By the way, the best literature is AA pamphlets. Number one, they're brief. You can read one in 20 minutes. Number two, they're free. Number three, there's not a wasted syllable, because number four, they're written by pros who have been there. Where do you learn anything best? Ask the man who owns one. If you're going to buy a pair of roller skates, you don't go to a Cadillac owner and ask about performance. You want to know something about alcoholics? Go to where they are. Go to where they are. So I'm inviting everybody to some open AA meetings. They are just that, open, when announced as such. They're open to interested people. A lot of non-alcoholics who would, let's say, have a mother dying of cancer would read everything they could get their hands on about it. My youngest sister has 7 children. The 6th was born a dwarf. When that kid was born, everybody in the family read everything they could get their hands on about dwarfism. Oddly enough, somebody's got an alcoholic in a family that's been frustrated and screaming for 17 years, and they haven't bothered to find anything about it. The paradox of the thing is unbelievable. It's a weird thing to look at non-alcoholics and say, come to an AA meeting. Now you want to know something about attitude? Most non-alcoholics wouldn't get caught dead at an AA meeting. Can you see them walking in there? Who's looking? And hold it. You get inside, and this is the big one. How will they know I'm not one? Attitudes are there. What I'd like to do here is give all of you a working knowledge as to what an alcoholic is, and we'll point out a few early symptoms, because, ladies and gentlemen, a moron can diagnose it in the latter stages when he's about dead. And you don't need brains to diagnose it, you need a pair of eyes. If a child can diagnose it, you ought to be able to. You want to know what an alcoholic is? Go to the home of an alcoholic, talk to the kids. Kids just don't say things like, my mother and dad are always fighting, sometimes he hits her. I don't bring kids home from school anymore. I despise weekends, I have to be there. The kid gets right to the heart of the matter and says the obvious, my daddy drinks too much, that's what's wrong in this house. You know what an alcoholic is? Let me give you for instance. Up in Alaska, on these radio talk shows from 10 to midnight, I was called at 11:30 by a young fellow about 22. He said, Father, I just drink beer. He was drinking at the time. I said, are you drinking now? He said, yes. He said, I drink a lot of beer, usually a 6-pack or twice that much every night. And on weekends, I do a little heavy drinking. But he said, now, I've never lost work. I've been commended for my job. I don't have hangovers. On and he went. He went on for about 8 minutes. And at the end, he asked the magic question. Do you think I am or could become an alcoholic? I said, son, I don't even know you. I wouldn't know you if I fell on it. I never saw you with a glass in your hand, but I know this. I like string beans. But I don't call radio stations at 11:30 at night to ask some total stranger if I got a problem with it. Of course the kid has a problem with his drinking. I call it alcoholism. You know what an alcoholic is? My definition is based on a self-evident truth. You don't prove self-evident truths, they're self-evident. For example, what causes problems is one because it causes problems. Now, I can't explain that. Neither can you. You buy it or you don't. There's a hole in the sidewalk in the front of your house. And in the last 4 years, you have tripped and busted your leg 6 times. Now, I'd like to submit this for your serious intellectual consideration. The hole is a problem. Fill it up. You know what we do? We sit on the porch with our leg in a cast, and we intellectualize about caulk. Well, the reason I broke my leg last week was because it was dark. The time before that, I tripped over a roller skate and fell into the hole. The intellectual sits on the porch with both legs in the cast. He's smart. Listen to him. This is a rainy area of the country. The soil is very porous. When the rain hits the soil, it makes it soggy, and it eroded, and it ate. Fill the hole up, jerk, and you're going to break your leg again. Now, please, you want to know what an alcoholic is? An alcoholic is somebody who's drinking makes problems. An alcoholic is somebody who's drinking makes problems. It's that simple. I don't care how serious the problems are. I don't care how far apart they are. I don't care how early they are. If the drinking causes trouble, it is. Get rid of the drinking, or the trouble will increase. Remember the marvelous story of the Emperor's Clothes? This man wanted the most beautiful suit in the kingdom. He couldn't get it, so he pretended he had it, and he announced it to the whole kingdom that he had the most beautiful suit in the world. And one day, without a stitch on, he hopped on a horse and drove through the kingdom. And all the PhDs were sitting on the wall saying, "Look at that beautiful jacket. Aren't those lovely shoes?" The little kid says, "He's naked." The little chin can spot things that we intellectualize about. All right. What are some of the early symptoms that indicate this illness? Number 1, lying. Ladies and gentlemen, we speak of sexual aberration and unnatural acts. They fail in the insignificance of every lie. You know what a lie is? The prostitution of mind. That is unnatural. Lie about your drinking. You have a drinking problem. I'm not talking about the verbal lie. "George, have you been drinking?" He says, "No, honey," and passes out. All right, we know that's a lie. What I'm talking about is living the lie. Have you ever functioned in such a way as to convince people you're not drinking when you're drinking? An alcoholic who drinks in the morning gets on an elevator and holds his breath for 91 floors so you won't smell him. He's known as the blue variety. Take a non-alcoholic who's been drinking in the morning, he steps on an elevator, you say, "You've been drinking?" He says, "Yeah, just named from one reception." Why? I use one question to diagnose alcoholism. One question. Do normal drinkers do this? The answer is no. You're talking about alcohol. Gulping and sneaking drinks. Case in point, the closet drinker. I'm going to slam you in the head with the obvious now. Do you know a normal eater who goes into a closet to eat a card bar? I know a few abnormal eaters who do that. If any of you men were to go home tonight and see your wife sneak out of the dining room, into the bathroom, open the toilet tank, pull out a bottle of milk and drink 3 shots, you'd have her come in. Alcoholics drink this way all the time, we laugh at them. And then there's weak bladder Willie. He's the guy who has to go to the bathroom 8 or 9 times before lunch on a Monday. Everybody, watch the reaction. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to see attitudes, our own included? Watch what happens when old Willie or his female counterpart, the secretary, gets up to go to the job. We all know why. She's got a hangover, right? But you don't drink at your desk. So she picks up the purse with the bottle in it and heads for the lavatory. Guess what we do? We wink, we nudge, and we giggle. Girl has a terminal disease, and we think it's funny. All you have to do is ask your question, do normal drinkers drink in the toilet? Not usually. Where are you going, Henry? Get a martini? You don't do that. Normal drinkers don't do it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, why do we fail to recognize the disease in its early stages? One of the most prevalent misconceptions about alcoholism on earth. If an alcoholic is still functioning, he can't be one. See, when I go back to her desk, she's the most efficient secretary in the building. So we don't diagnose it, we let her die. Number 3. Alcoholism is addiction to alcohol. We know very little about addiction. We know 2 things. Precious little else. Number 1, all addiction externalizes itself in compulsive use. The alcoholic drinks the way he drinks because he can't not drink that way. It has nothing to do with willpower. Nothing to do with willpower. He can't help it. The normal drinker can't understand this because he doesn't have it.
He doesn't, why don't you just stop and drink? You know, if you drink more now, you're going to get fired. He winds up drunk. We can't understand that. Well, once you grasp the nature of addiction, that the addict uses compulsively, you've had it. Once, if you do not grasp that notion, you will never, ever understand the alcoholic. Once you do grasp that notion, you can almost predict his irrational behavior. So when somebody comes up to you and says, why, she was drunk at her daughter's graduation, you say, of course she was. That's what's wrong. Alcoholism is addiction to alcohol. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if there are any of you here who can't understand alcohol addiction, try any of the other four. There are 5 basic addictions. Narcotics, alcohol, food, gambling, and work. And there's only one that isn't serious. The work addict, the compulsive cleaner. Ever been in a home so clean looks like nobody lives there, or would want to? If you're sitting there and a hostess will empty the ashtray 19 times in a half hour, and you don't smoke. You feel guilty about having your feet on the floor and there's nowhere else to put them. Right. Those things are a little bit funny. The other addictions are perfectly serious. The alcohol addict drinks alcohol because he can't not drink alcohol. Number 4. I want to help. I see he's got it. He has no control over it. What do I do? Confront the alcoholic with the fact of his illness. How should the confrontation be made? By the right person with the right words at the right time in the right place. What are they? I don't know. If I did, I could save a nation. But I can tell you that I would like to discuss confrontation in general. Number 1, there are a lot of people who are recovered alcoholics who say out of this side of their mouths, yes, alcoholism is a disease. I wish those dumb doctors knew it. It's an illness of body, mind, emotion, and soul. And yet out of this side of their mouths they say, but I'm not going to help him until he makes a rational decision about his health and asks me to help him. If you have a 5-year-old who needs dental care and is afraid or doesn't realize about dentistry, and he doesn't want to go, you grab him and you take him. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a myth about coercion and the alcoholic. Yes, you can force an alcoholic into treatment. It's just that you can't force him to respond to it. I don't want to hear this garbage about leading horses to water and not making them drink. I know that. If you leave them there, let them smell the water and make them thirsty. Who is the right person? Preferably someone in authority. The boss pulls the employee in and says, go into treatment or seek new employment. He said, yes, sir. Let me tell you something about a confrontation. It does not just point out what is wrong. You have a drinking problem. It also offers a possible solution. I know where you can get help, and I'll take you there. You see, if you just tell me I have a problem and stop there, I'm going to learn 2 things about you. You're moralizing and you're condescending. And you're going to learn something about me. I won't be listening. Tell me where I can get help. And if you've been to a few meetings yourself, you'll know where to take me. What are the right words? I don't know. It's a studied, judgmental thing. I know a man whose life was saved by a son whom he adored. He came home drunk one night. The kid said, Dad, you stink. 3 words saved the man's life. Saved his life. He could have said it the night before and been cursed for his pain. The right place, I don't know, but you don't degrade a sick person by falling it out in a room full of people. I know that much. You ought to talk to him when he's drunk. He's all drugged up. The best time to get any alcoholic is when he's in pain. Ladies and gentlemen, pain is God's greatest gift to the alcoholic. No alcoholic is more blessed than the one who arrives at that point in his life where he wakes up in the morning, looks into a mirror, and experiences an overwhelming desire to puke because he can't stand what he's looking at. That is a gift. Pain is the greatest gift that God gives alcoholics. You know what's behind that? This is the underlying principle. When you hurt bad enough to want to quit hurting, you will do something to stop the pain. You know that toilet seat that has that opening in the front? I'm serious. That was invented by an alcoholic who got tired of getting hit in the back of the neck. Number 5. Make the alcoholic responsible for his behavior. I'm not talking about moral guilt, I'm talking about legal responsibility. Here's a kid who hits a baseball and it goes through a window. He goes next door and says, Miss Smith, I hit that ball, I'm sorry. She says, I forgive you. That'll be $12.98. You pay for the glass. AA says, made a list of persons we have harmed, became willing to make amends to them all, made direct amendments. So the therapy of AA, I have found out from hundreds of AA members, backs me up in this. Make the alcoholic responsible for his behavior. Why, ladies and gentlemen, what is the underlying principle here? Again, it's the simplest thing on earth. Every time you pick up the tab of the alcoholic, you just bought him his next drunk. It doesn't make sense. Every time a wife makes good a bouncy check, she just gave permission to write another one. It doesn't make sense. Alcoholism is a family disease, and families need treatment. Ladies and gentlemen, it was in Newsweek magazine in the medicine department not too overly long ago. They are switching now from one-on-one therapy to family therapy. Most people are members of a family. Because there are a few who are not. There are loners around. But most people belong to a family, and every problem in that family affects the whole family. Families need treatment. I've met several men who have doctorates in family therapy, and they do nothing but that. Over 50% of recovered alcoholics come from an alcoholic parent or two. Let me show you how sick a non-alcoholic member of an alcoholic family can get. I know a couple back in Maryland. I know them very well. I've eaten in their home. At the height of his drinking, he allowed her to believe it was her fault, and she believed it too. She's very timid at best. That woman was reduced to being a robot. She would not hang her clothes except at 2 a.m. in the dark. She didn't want people to look at her. She used to scotch tape the blinds on the first floor of her house so the neighbors couldn't look in and see that he was gone. Her 5-year-old used to tell her what to put on the table for meals. Non-alcoholics who live with alcoholics become as sick or sicker than the alcoholics. Case in point, a family that I know, the alcoholic husband has gone. He left 8 years ago. The mother is strong. She's a nurse. She went back to work. She supported the family, paid the mortgage, etc., etc., etc. She is so full of bitterness and hostility that he is still the sole topic of her conversation. Every word out of her mouth is negative, critical. What's so tragic? She's raising 4 kids. It is my opinion that the family needs treatment. Back at home, I know a man who belongs to AA. He's a 75-year-old pharmacist. He has about 30 years of sobriety. 3 years ago, his 50-year-old son came into treatment. And since then, his 3 kids came into treatment. One was 16, one was 19, and one was 20. On and on. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what causes alcoholism. I only know that it is caused. What can we do about it? How do we treat the whole family? By knowing all of the resource people in the community and using them. Get to know your alcoholism resources. And any one single person who believes that he alone can get an alcoholic completely well is a fool. Alcoholism is the most complete illness known, body, mind, emotion, and soul. And it takes a network of people to get the job done. Yes, the surgeon saves your life, but he has an anesthesiologist and 6 nurses to help. And he's got post-operative care up there on the ward after you come out of surgery. It takes a network of people to get a family well. I believe, from what I have learned over the years, that AA is the best treatment for alcoholism. It's the only one that works the way it works. It works best for most. They have an 800,000 recovery number to prove it. Al-Anon and Al-Ateen are for the spouses and friends and the children of alcoholics. The basic notion of all of these disciplines is peer therapy. All of these therapies are the most pragmatic and practical on earth. They were brought into being by desperate people who were concerned with continuing to breathe. And so the therapy that they brought into being is eminently practical and works. And the last is purely personal. There are a lot of people working in the world of the alcoholic day after day and hour after hour, and they watch more people die than get well. It is estimated by the United States government there are about 10 million alcoholics in the country. There are less than 1 million recovered. You figure it out. It can be the most discouraging and disheartening work on the face of the earth. It takes infinite patience and tolerance and unbelievable devotion. And there's only one thing that stands in the way, and that's discouragement. I was coming out of the theater at McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey, and a master sergeant stopped me. His name was Lee something or other. He said, "I'm a Baptist minister, and when my 20 years in the service is over, I'm going back home, and I intend to dedicate my life to alcoholics." I said, "That's rather strange for a Baptist, Lee." I said, "How come?" He said, "My father and my brother both died alcoholic deaths." And I could see what was in his mind. Their lives were wasted, and they were lost, and I'm going to do something to make up for it. I said, "Lee, did it ever dawn on you that God asked them to carry their sickness to the grave instead of getting well before they will get their sobriety after death? People die of cancer and we weep for them. People die of alcoholism, we say, what a wasted life." I can't prove this, ladies and gentlemen, but I believe it, and I told him this. I said, "Did it ever dawn on you that the alcoholic who dies drunk helps to buy sobriety for those who get well on earth?" He looked like a Christmas tree. He said, "I never thought of that." I said, "Well, it's about time you did. It's about time you did." Ladies and gentlemen, if I did not believe that no alcoholic who dies drunk dies in vain, then my whole life as a priest is a waste, and the whole concept of the brotherhood of man is a joke. I just believe that those who die drunk have bought sobriety for the rest of us. I also believe this, that every single human being is capable before he dies of saving another human life. I can't prove that, I just believe it. And once you, by trying some of these things, have had your hand in the saving of another human life, you're caught up in it and you're addicted to alcoholics forever. It's the most gratifyingly beautiful experience on the face of the earth. I had a 35-year-old sailor on the island of Guam come up and shake my hand and say, "Thank you for saving my life." I had a beautiful black lady in Braintree, Massachusetts, in a high school auditorium say, "My name is Edna. Thank you for saving my life." A 22-year-old sailor in Norfolk, Virginia came up to me after a meeting one night, shook my hand, he said, "I just had to touch you," and he hugged me. He said, "I think I'm going to cry." So of course I did. You know, I can go to my grave on that, continuing. I never look at those who don't make it, except with a prayer. That never discourages me at all. Ladies and gentlemen, I simply believe that God gives his goodness through pain as well as through pleasure. And what makes the victory of one life saved so precious is that it came through pain. And because of that, that is what I wish you this evening. I do not wish you joy without a sorrow, nor endless day without the healing dark, nor brilliant sun without the restful shadow, nor tides that never turn against your bark. I wish you faith and strength and love and wisdom, goods old enough to help some needy one. I wish you songs, but also blessed silence and God's sweet peace when every day is done. Thank you so much, and good night.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. to install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.